Brenda, I am an addict.
Hey, Brenda.
It's an honor to be here at Camp Mac. You know, I love this place. What I'm going to tell you is about what worked for me when I did my 4th, 5th, and 6th steps. The first time I did a 4th step, I was told that I had a foundation in the program, that I had a willingness to be honest, and that gave me courage, you know, because of that word moral. And because when I came into recovery, I didn't have writing skills, spelling skills, thinking skills. And my sponsor, and I asked her, you know, okay, so what do you mean I have to write this? How do I write a 4th step? And what I did was I put thoughts as they came to me on whatever I could find around. A napkin, paper towel, a piece of paper in the car. And then I combined them all in a list at her discretion, and she took me piece by piece through the writing process. I had the basic text, not a step working guide like we have available today. And I was so excited to be able to do that. You know, here I am, I'm on my 4th step, you know, and it took me almost a year to actually get it written and put together. I didn't understand words. That was the beginning of me learning that my definition of a word might be wrong. And that's where I was taught to get a dictionary and look it up. And, you know, and I remember, you know, I had it marked because I didn't know how to spell. So, you know, that's what worked. That's how I had to do things. I didn't like what I saw when I wrote my first 4th step, because I could only focus on the bad. I didn't have it within me to see much good. And you know, we all today hear it said that you do a 4th step without looking at a 5th, you know, but I'm an addict. I know there's a 5th. I know I'm going to have to do it eventually, or else I'm gonna use. And so I had all this stuff written down on this paper that I guarded with my life because I didn't want anybody else to read it. And my sponsor finally said, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll get together and we'll look at what you got. And we set the date, you know, because this is step 5, you know. And in my thinking, it's like, okay, I'm moving up this ladder. Okay, I'm at step 4, it's done, I'm going to step 5. Well, it took me a month to actually commit to meeting with her. And then I canceled the first time, last minute, you know, because I had been taught that if you're not going to show, you need to call and let somebody know. You just don't not show up. And so I called them, and I don't remember what excuse I gave, but I gave one. And I did that 3 other times before I finally said, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to be there on time, and we'll do this. And she made it very, very comfortable for me to sit in her home. She had her phone turned off. It was just she and I. She let me smoke in her house. I was scared to death to say to another person all the stuff I had written bad about me. What came out of it was a good 3 hours later, we had gone through all that stuff I wrote, and somehow she identified with what I did to get money, when I lied, when I stole, when I hurt my kids, when I hurt my husband, when I hurt. She identified with everything that I had written. And, you know, God puts people in my life for a reason, and she was able to pull out of me the good things, you know. I realized that I wasn't the best mother, but I was a mother, that I had my children, and that I could teach them a different way to live, that I could learn a different way to live, that I had some compassion, that I was a human being, that I wasn't the only slut in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. She, you know, she makes everything real. That's what she does with me. One of the things that I remember, you know, I didn't have the good things written down, but I had all the negative, all the bad things that I had done when I was active, and how they affected me and other people. So when I was done, and she's like, so what do you want to do with this? And I just, you know, hide it. You know, it's got to stay hidden. I don't want, you know, my kids to find it. I don't want my significant other to find it. I don't want my mom to find it, you know. And she's always taught me that actions are what we need to do in recovery. And the action that I needed to do with my fourth step was we burned it. You know, we sat out in her front on the step, the little sidewalk, and we set it on fire. And I got a relief that I had never, ever experienced before in my life. You know, that's some of the light bulb moments we get in the program. I'll never, ever forget that. You know, and I have done other fourth steps since then. But that very first one, for me to be honest in black and white about me was very hard. You know, so and I remember, you know, I was in between my 3 and 4 years, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm on step 6 because I'm still doing the platform. And so I'm like, so what do you do for step 6? And she's like, just be for a while. And I have been for a long time. I had no clue the depth that I would go, the pain that I would go through, the learning that would come from it. And how it would affect my life and the choices I make in my life. You know, and I was reading through today. I don't know if it's in the basic text I was looking or if I read it in the step working guide. But it says in there, this step takes time. You know, this whole process of recovery takes time. And I have a lot of those light bulb moments of letting go of my character defects. You know, my sponsor would have me, because I have to do the physical stuff, and she would say, you know, Brenda, you're here. You know, she'd hold my hand and she'd go, this is whatever's going on, whatever the situation was. And at one point it was one of my ex-husbands and the disease of addiction and how it was affecting me. And she made me hold it, you know, and she made me hold it for a long time during a meeting. I was holding it. And after the meeting, we were outside because, you know, I was out smoking, and she came up to me and she was like, are you ready to let go? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to let go of this. And she said, okay, just let go. And I'm like, what do you mean just let go? I don't know how to just let go. And she said to me, open your hand and let it go. And I remember standing there going, I can't do that. Because if I let it go, it's gone. And I did. Eventually, that night, I opened my hand. But I cried like a baby. Because for me, it was intense. And that's been my experience with all my character defects. And, you know, I grew up with them. They have been what made me me. And in recovery, I'm learning to change. And you know, that's that warm, comfortable shit that I hang on to. Since that one experience that I have had, I have learned to be a little more kind to myself and let go. And sometimes I still have to do that. You know, I have to write it out on a piece of paper, ball it up, hold on to it, take it out, and let it go. You know, when I had my fireplace, I was real good about writing things down and putting them in the fireplace. You know, here you go, God, it's all yours. You know, I'm a believer that my higher power can handle these things, and I can't. And it sure does make life a lot easier to live. I am an addict. I still have the thinking. I still struggle with things at times. But I'm grateful that I have a program. I believe the steps are written in an order for a reason. And I love the first 3. You know, I've heard people say that time and time again, but you know what, today I really have a deep love for those. And after having been asked to share this afternoon, I realized that I have a lot of gratitude for 4, 5, and especially 6. If you want to know about 7, 8, and 9, keep coming back, okay? Grateful to be alive and clean and at this wonderful, wonderful retreat. With that, I'll let you have the next person, who's Jay.
My name's David. I'm an addict.
Hey, Dave!
I was thinking earlier that last night when I was asked to share today, I should have said no. Kind of out of it last night, and even more out of it today. And I think that's just fine, because it's kind of like how my whole recovery's gone. I'm one of those guys that I'm a real example of recovery. I'm not necessarily always a good example of recovery. I don't do this gracefully. I've been that kind of hit me because of thinking of how many ways I've benefited from being a bad example, and how many ways I've benefited from learning from the bad example of others. That it so much takes the pressure off. There's some words in 4, 5, and 6, especially 6, as that word entirely. There were words like that were freaking me out from the time I got here. Even before I got here, because I got hold of one of the books before I ever came to the program from a friend that was, getting clean, looking for help, and man, I got a hold of his book and I was blown. And some of the stuff in here, to me, in my absolute black and white, tunnel vision way of looking at things, I took what was already a bunch of dope fiends who wrote things in dogmatic absolute terms, and I took it to dogmatic absolute terms too, and I said, I can't do this. And that really got confirmed to me, when I couldn't stay clean on my own, and I ended up getting busted a year later. And the first time I did really structured step work, the whole time I was doing it I was thinking to myself, I can't do this. And I was in treatment. It was like, not to like endorse or knock treatment. It's just my experience. That my first experience was with the steps was not through Narcotics Anonymous. It was through a service I was paying money for. Most of the people that were the professionals there had personal experience with the steps and the recovery programs of one sort or another. But I kind of was trucking through them thinking I wasn't doing it right and it wasn't going to be good enough, and by the time I got to 12 I'd be fucked, because I already was. And I was scared. I was real scared. And they didn't take you all the way through where I went. I only got through 5. And then you graduated. They gave you a little stuffed animal. And you were out on the streets. And, it was just you and this free thing. And where I was getting my recovery at the time, it was like, okay, well, that was what you paid for. You got to start over now. That, and I thought I could just move on from there. That step 6 that I did, that 5th step I did, just move on to 6. The 4th step took me an afternoon. The 5th step took me an hour appointment with, is how it was, So I kind of was buying into it. Okay, well, they didn't come up with the steps, these programs did. I'll surrender. I'll do it. But also, another thing about what starting over on structured step work looked like back then was not 1, 2, and 3. It was 4. I did not know whether I was going to pick up a pen or pick up a gun each night. It was miserable and it was frightening, and I wasn't really ready to dive in. And I kept coming up with excuses and being busy, because another nice thing about that program, area or whatever, was step 4 was something you did pretty much on a weekend, and then the 5th step was something you did in just a few hours, instead of 1 hour. But I still wasn't ready for it. The people that I saw that were doing this 4-step stuff, they looked like hell. I was feeling like hell. I mean, we're talking, going to meetings, elbows on the table, face in their hands, hair all freaking greasy, looking like they haven't seen a razor. They made it look really, really scary. And, when I started on it myself, I think I made it look pretty scary too. I was just beating the hell out of myself every night, and not, I'd give up on it, and I just all these false starts, 15 minutes, and then I'd give up, and I couldn't finish. I couldn't get through it. Then I'd start again. No such thing as ripping off the Band-Aid. There were so many things I didn't want to face, so many relationships I didn't want to think about, so many resentments and that I was just bitter about, and everything was about I suck. And I was starting to get really blown off by a lot of the people who had the same sponsor, kind of a group thing going, because I wasn't pushing through. And I backed off. I got a different sponsor. We used to go throw darts in bars. That was a lot easier. The darts were easier to pick up than the pen, I can tell you. And that really wasn't going anywhere either. And then I started going to this other program called Narcotics Anonymous. And at the time, at my first year or so, I was told not to really go there because there was no recovery there. And there was pretty much just a younger people, man. And it was just like, a place for the rest of us to go to get away from the 50-year-olds and get laid. And but it was also in a campus town. And there's this one guy that started showing up that moved there from another area with like 3 years clean. And that was my first introduction to the Narcotics Anonymous approach of StepWorks, with doing 1, 2, and 3, laying a foundation to be ready. And I cannot tell you what a difference it was to do a 4th step, not without fear, but with some freaking tools that were ready to make me see that there was that 4, 5, and 6 weren't some horrible thing that had nothing to do with my addiction. They had everything to do with my addiction. That my addiction had so much more to do with things than substance abuse. This character defect stuff, and that had so much to do with the way my whole outlook on life and myself. And 1, 2, and 3 got me ready to face that. 1, got me to again, take a deeper look at what addiction was besides substance abuse. Get a glimmer that there was these shortcoming things, these character defect things, that there was some explanation in my life for all these problems besides substance abuse. Which, that wasn't a horrible news. To hear that addiction had to do with more than substance abuse to me was a relief, So that got me a bit more ready for step 4. And then step 2 gave me, it was just like, there was a complication in 2 about, this whole God thing and picking religion to convert to it and all that, but finally, somebody really got me set straight with that too, about, man, look at all these people that did it and got through these other steps, and if they can do it and you're like them, you can do it too. Wow, hope. This chance to develop relationships, supportive relationships, this chance to practice writing before I start to write about some overwhelming stuff that I thought would be overwhelming. Then the 3rd step, this whole thing, about this determination to do my part and to just trust that everything else was going to take care of itself and turn out okay. 1, 2, and 3 prepared me in a way that I wasn't ready for 4, 5, and 6. As far as how to do step 4, as far as the written inventory thing anyway, again, looking to people who had experience rather than theories and opinions. I love this program because, people just said, it's in there, it's in the book. When people share their experience, I usually just hear a great story. I don't necessarily hear instructions. When I first got clean, people were drill sergeant. They told you exactly what to do in no uncertain terms. But now we're kind of a little less like up each other so much sometimes, sometimes a little too lovey-dovey abandonment, but not so drill sergeant enmeshment, man. And the instructions are still there, but now we get it from each other's experience. And there's, somebody pointed out, man, when somebody said, I found it helpful to, just pick up a pen and start to write, whatever. I was supposed to knock off all the fluff at the beginning about them and turn it into a piece of instruction. Pick up a pen and write. You know, many of us have, learned to set aside time each day. Oh, okay, set aside time each day. And then, the sponsor I got now, he had me go through the step 4 in the book. It's just a couple pages, and turn all those sentences that are these, loose leash kind of, words, instead of do this, and give myself the do this. There's this, I came up with almost, 20, I think it was, things in step 4 that's just these few pages in the book say to do step 4. One of them was to do 1, 2, and 3, which again I found out the hard way. I've done step 4 a few different ways, and I won't go into the format because, I'll just say that the approach I used in the past originally was to, again, still beat myself up, not as thoroughly. 1, 2, and 3 relieved me of that, but I was still using step 4 just as a form of just, a whip. I was just whipping myself with it. And I also went about it in a way that focused less on the patterns and more at reliving the traumas of each event that I was writing about, and reliving the blame and reliving the shame. And I've really learned to write a number of examples about something instead of focusing on each and every little horrible thing that happened in my life. Kind of basically looking at the patterns, not the stories so much. Not to relive the pain, and also to try and write about the good stuff too. Step 5, the first sponsor that I had in NA, we didn't like each other, but I did my 5th step with him, and one of the neat things he did with me was he had me grab something that reminded me of myself. I chose a picture of myself. He said that some people use a mirror, and I've had sponsees grab a mirror when doing their 5th step with them. He had me grab something that made me, think of God, and for me, I just lit a candle, And then he told me, even though we didn't like each other, he told me, a little bit about his, when we met. And his first impressions of me and the connection. He didn't get into any details that freaked me out. I was scared when he started because this is a guy who is my guide through the steps, but not my friend. Who barely tolerates me. And so it scared the crap out of me that he was going to go down basically do my 6th step for me. I thought he was going to get into my shortcomings, and he didn't. It was just about kind of getting that intimacy going before I started getting intimate with him. And I liked that. And I've done that with my sponsees ever since, too. And sometimes we've been, it's been with people that I was really tight with and just like family tight with. And those have been some amazing experiences to just kind of set the stage. And when I was sharing with him, I was, again, just constantly scared of being judged because I was judging the crap out of me, and I was used to being judged. But he really didn't, he shared his experiences with me without one-upping me. He asked, some of his stories were more extreme than mine, but he didn't go down the gory details of them. He just made me feel like I wasn't alone. And there was the person that I was taking guidance from had experience with getting over this stuff, and that helped a lot, and again, this guy was no friend of mine by any stretch. He was just the best option I had for a guide through the steps, and it worked. It's all it took. It didn't have to be perfect. And with step 6, I forgot to mention I really stalled out every time I first went through the steps on step 3. Well, I did the first few times on step 6 too. Step 6 was a major stall out point for me, and it was like I was adrift. he didn't have a lot of, I don't know, real experience with anything structured for step 6. Some of the structured stuff we do for the steps, I think, like, makes a lot of sense and it's obvious. But to me, damn near anything you do for step 6 helps keep you anchored to the program. I've got really diverted again at step 6. It is a process, and during a process, it's easy to drift from Narcotics Anonymous, from recovery, from... I was going to meetings, but I wasn't connected in so much. I mean, step 4 and 5 is an intimate thing, but it's, in a lot of ways, it's a self-intimate thing. I mean, I was into my own headship, you know, and it was like I was relieved of all this stuff, you know, and I was ready to move on with my life. And I didn't feel the pull, the draw, and the desire for the rest of the steps, especially the cleanup work of step 8 and 9. I sure as hell wanted 12, you know, I thought, you know, but I really was kind of caught adrift. I got involved in relationships. I took on more responsibility with work. I took my service commitments to a really focused degree. They were less about a growth experience for me in Narcotics Anonymous and more like a job I had for Narcotics Anonymous. And I even, you know, I became kind of dogmatic about them. And my step work was just completely freaking adrift. Since then, some of the things I've had sponsors tell me to do during step 6 have been really, like, they made some, like, head sense that, you know, step 6, man, I really learned that I've got so many strengths, not a lot of weaknesses. We got a lot of strengths. And one of the assignments that helped me with step 6 on that was to take everything on that, you know, that came out of my 4th step about these shortcomings and these character defects, and look at their spiritual opposite and recognize that I had those too. And where my worst character defects were, that spiritual opposite was my strongest thing too. Really, you know, when I got more down the road into 7, I finally realized that most of the stuff I was calling character defects were really just shortcomings. I fall short of being perfect in everything I do. That the only character defects I really have are pretty much just self-centeredness and fear. And that those things were guiding my strengths into lust. Those things were guiding my, you know, passion is a wonderful thing. You add some self-centeredness and fear into passion, you know, baby, you know, greed, arrogance, all of those things, you know, are wonderful strengths or horrible strengths, depending on whether you're helping me guide through it or my mood is helping me guide through it. And, you know, doing this deal where, you know, I had, like, you know, carrying a card with a list on it, and, you know, and looking at my character defects, that was helpful, you know, to learn that stuff. But really, more than anything else, it was a freaking anchor. So when I was ready to move on, and there wasn't a lot I did to become entirely ready, except let steps 4 and 5 sink in, which just took time. And you know, my favorite one now that I've already kind of done this, like, more like head trippy analytical assignment of listing character defects and looking at their opposites and listing shortcoming, you know, the difference between a shortcoming and a character defect. My favorite one is just keep journaling. I mean, what a load off. I don't have to do something to become entirely ready. I just have to stay the course and keep in practice of doing something, so that when I'm ready, I'll feel the push from behind and the pull from ahead, and I will, you know, and I'm still in the habit of doing something. You know, it's not too complicated and it's not too analytical, and I like that. Just keep journaling. And that's what keeps me from getting to be a service junkie or getting diverted by a relationship, or, you know, just, you know, wanting to move on with my life and put this NA bullshit behind me. You know, yeah, I like that just keep journaling one. I want to make a quick comment too about, you know, that's all like the formal structured step work, but I don't want to go too far off the deep end, but I do want to touch on, you know, none of these steps is an activity. None of these steps, there's step work, but each of these steps is in our daily lives. And it took me a while to get that about 4, 5, and 6. I thought that the daily life part was just doing the step 10, the daily inventory, right? Well, I've really learned that I can feel myself moving backwards through the steps, and that's what made me realize there's a living of 4, 5, and 6 every day that's different than step 10. It's easy to see yourself moving backwards through steps 3, 2, and 1. It's like in step 3, you move backwards. It's just like, I ain't doing the meetings as much, I'm busy, whatever. Step 2, mind goes slamming closed. Fuck these people, they can't manage their own lives anyway. They're a bunch of hypocrites. Look at them doing all their whoring and whatever. And step 1 is, I can take it. Just for a little while. Whatever insanity, whatever compulsive thing, I can get away with this for a while. Well, falling backwards through step 6 for me is really getting rebellious. It's not so much the regular closed-mindedness, but just that whole unwillingness. I can move on with my life. And step 5, when I'm falling backwards to step 5, you ask me how I'm doing, you're going to get that fine answer again. Because I don't know where, it's different than step 10. Step 10 is being in touch with the bullshit I'm up to now, the little games I'm up to now, and copping to it and saying, I was wrong. Step 5 is about being myself, warts and all, being real, today, being, sharing myself with others. And step 4 is knowing where I've come from, not just what I'm up to. And so much of my addiction, and is about having a screwed up view of where I came from and my place in this world and how bad it sucks. So for me, step 4, 5, and 6 are something that we practice every day. Whether we get head trippy about it and think about it and get analytical about it or not, we're still doing it, So grab the book because I just want to share one line from the book. There's all kinds of stuff you can read when you come up and give them one of these deals, but I don't like words like, we have to rid ourselves of all reservations. Okay, as of about this month, I've been in Narcotics Anonymous half my life, and I still have a lot of reservations, and I still got to work on them. And this step has the word entirely in it. Well, here's a great line for me out of step 6. Yeah, the idea that it takes time and as a process is important, but I don't like things that take time. Rebellion is a character defect that spoils us here. We need not lose faith when we become rebellious. Rebellion can produce indifference or intolerance, which can be overcome by persistent effort. We keep asking for willingness. We may be doubtful that God will see fit to relieve us, or that something will go wrong. We ask another member who says, you're right where you're supposed to be. I really dig that. That's all I got.
Thanks, Jay.
I made it. I'm an addict. We've got about 10 minutes if anyone else wants to come up and share.
Somebody help me out. Okay, I knew that. I was just playing. Right. Yeah. I'm an addict seeking recovery. My name is Philip W.
Hey, Philip.
When I honestly get into the thinking process of doing a searching and fearless moral inventory on that fourth practice, being honest, the second stage of me being honest after step 1, being honest with myself. But being that searching and fearless moral inventory, I have to really and truly realize that I'm not considering going back and doing a history. I have to, when I'm doing the inventory, I have to do stuff on me in the now. Inventory for me means go on the shelf, look and see what's up there. Take an inventory of what's on the shelf. So I have to look at the shelf being, and it has to be that without fear, fearless, there is no fear. So whatever I see on the shelf about me, I need to, be thorough about it too. Searching in fearless moral inventory. So, I don't like really seeing me like that. That being that honest. Because see, the disease of addiction that's within me, where there's something wrong with me, that I'm trying to find the humility that I need to really and truly stay focused about not picking up that first one. So when it comes to admitting to God, to ourselves and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, step 5, my mind has to be open to that, about the honesty that I'm trying to deal with in this reality. Collecting myself into the moment, because I don't like pain. See, that's the exact nature of my wrong. Be it, and I don't necessarily talk about no physical pain. I can be going through some mental pain, some emotional pain, something spiritual pain. But if it's pain, then I'm like that man that's drowning, looking up, seeing the straw floating, and I'm reaching for it, because it's floating and I'm sinking. See, coming into the now, the reality of why am I here? Why am I in this meeting today? Why am I at this meeting in the practice of these steps with the principles going in the front? That's what I have to look at. The wording is good, but I need to really and truly incorporate the spiritual principles into who I am, my character. Because see, now it's talking about defects of character. Becoming entirely ready to have God remove these defects. Okay, God. See, have I really and truly, in the third step, actually made the decision to turn my will and my life over? Have I been that willing for real? Am I just on the surface? Because see, 4, 5, and 6 for me is about me looking at my imperfections, admitting my imperfections, accepting my imperfections, admitting them and accepting them. And cause some of this stuff, man, it helps me survive. It gets me through the day sometimes. So this process, man, it ain't no joke, man, to be here this weekend. This ain't no joke for me. I want to be able to collect all I can now, so that I can stay here now, because I know I'm dealing with some stuff now, and here I am practicing honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness now. These principles for a means of reality, so that I can, sometimes not have to act out on these defects of character. Because see, they say if you want to get fucked, you got to get in position. However you want to get fucked. You like it in the buck, you got to get in the buck. You like it bent over, you got to bend over. And I ain't sure all the time how I want it. Just get off. Let's just get it on. You was talking about passion. See, and I'm going to share this and I'm going to close, because those are some areas where I really and truly lack some stuff in identifying intimacy and commitment and passion. Because if I'm caught up in passion, I don't even need intimacy. I don't even need no commitment. All I need is my passion. See? And those are things that certainly and truly keep me from having a healthier marriage. Being a better father. That's some real stuff. When you come from where I came from, you got an obsession with pimping, and now all of a sudden, some years later, you got children and you got a wife. So that's a conflict. And my children are daughters, so that's a real conflict. I gotta change all my thinking and start looking at the reality of responsibility in being a husband and a father. And I don't even like that shit. I don't even like it. So the honesty, the open-mindedness, and the willingness for me to take a searching and fearless moral inventory, admitted to myself, to God, and another human being, who I'm gonna tell some of this stuff that goes on in my head. There's a lot of stuff that goes on now, even in doing some writing, man. It don't come out right to me, and it's my stuff. Talking about getting better, yeah, getting better. Just for today, I'm certainly in this process. I don't thank y'all, for real. I'm an addict seeking recovery. My name is Philip W. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip.
Anybody else? We got a couple minutes. Yeah, we'll share. Gone once, gone twice. Yeah. You coming up? Oh, no. Okay. Well, I did want to make a little announcement. We have in South Bend, we're having I think it's our 4th annual NA Service Family Picnic at Veterans Memorial Park, which is close to the IUSB campus in Elkhart. And, South Bend, excuse me. So we've got a few speakers, and we're going to have a mush ball game at the end, and there's potluck lunch. So we've got a flyer we'll just pass around here. So it'll be a good time. But if there's no other comments, then would you help me close with a group hug and a prayer?